Welcome back to Klepper's Corner. Today in history. Today we're cracking open January 18th, a date that behaves like it's competing in the historical decathlon. It's not content being the anniversary of one thing. No. January 18th is like, what if we collapsed empires, founded empires, broke sieges, invented medical imaging, created naval aviation, accidentally ruined Hawaii, introduced margarine drama, and got the internet mad enough to shut itself off? It's a day with range. It's the Meryl Streep of calendar dates. So let's jump into this six-ring circus. Segment 1, Ancient Chaos and Imperial Survival, 350 to 532. January 18th in the ancient world is basically a masterclass in, hey, maybe we shouldn't give absolute power to people who solve problems with swords. First up, the year 350. Magnentius, random Roman general, gets proclaimed emperor. Not by the emperor, no, by a bunch of elites who basically looked at the current emperor and said, we'd like to unsubscribe. Magnentius is the human equivalent of switching to an off-brand cereal because you're mad at Kellogg's. And this change sparks a civil war that bleeds Rome dry. It's the empire's version of trying to fix your phone by dropping it on the floor, then realizing you've only made things much, much worse. Fast forward to 474. Leo II becomes Eastern Roman emperor at the age of 7. 7. We've all seen a second grader throw a tantrum over cutting the crust off a sandwich. Imagine them ruling Constantinople. Honestly, the fact that the empire didn't collapse that day is history's greatest miracle. Then, 532 arrives with the Nika riots. Two chariot fan bases, the Blues and Greens, unite, which should have been a heartwarming Disney moment, except it ends with them burning half the city and demanding the emperor's head. Justinian almost flees, but Empress Theodora basically hits him with, do you want to die like a coward or stay like a legend? And Justinian goes, legend? He stays. 30,000 rioters die. Stability returns. It's messy, violent, and also the reason we get Roman law codes and the Hagia Sophia. History. Sometimes progress needs a motivational speech and a terrifying spouse. Segment 2, Empires Built on Marriage, Murder, and Mapping, 1486 to 1803. Now January 18th enters its let's redraw the map era. Starting with 1486, Henry VII marries Elizabeth of York, ending the Wars of the Roses. It's the ultimate political merger, like if Coke and Pepsi married and suddenly England had carbonation rights over the world. This marriage ends decades of bloodshed, ushers in the Tudors, and leads to Henry VIII, a man who would have been a one-star Yelp review if he were a husband. Then, in 1535, Francisco Pizarro decides the Andes are beautiful but inconvenient. So he founds Lima, right on top of the home of a local indigenous leader. The Spanish really mastered the art of, this land looks nice, we'll take it, and also your architecture. Lima becomes the crown jewel of colonial South America. Pizarro, meanwhile, becomes the guy who brought urban planning to Peru. And by urban planning, I mean forced reorganization under systemic oppression. Jump to 1671, and the pirate-turned-entrepreneur Henry Morgan sacks Panama City. Imagine a Caribbean Ocean's 11, but with fewer tuxedos and more muskets. Morgan destroys Spain's treasure route, goes home a hero, and somehow becomes lieutenant governor of Jamaica. Only in the 17th century can burning down a city qualify you for administrative leadership. Then, 1778. Captain James Cook sails into Hawaii. Hawaiians see tall sails, spiritual timing, ceremonial resemblance, and think, maybe he's Lono. Cook sees warm beaches and iron trade opportunities. Both sides misunderstand each other. One side loses its sovereignty. The other loses its captain. History is sometimes the most tragic improv show. Then, 1788. The British First Fleet reaches Australia and promptly decides, yeah, Botany Bay is terrible. Let's move up the road and claim another place. And just like that, Australia becomes the world's largest penal colony and the British Empire's biggest, we'll just put that here project. Finally, in 1803, Thomas Jefferson sends Congress a secret message requesting $2,500 for an exploration, which is presidential speak for "I'm absolutely planning to grab more land, I just don't want anyone asking questions." This little covert note sets off the Lewis and Clark expedition, westward expansion, and every childhood diorama involving Sacagawea. Segment 3, the birth of modern Germany, 1871, and its echo in 1919. Now we arrive at January 18th's favorite drama, Germany. In 1871, Germany decides to level up in the middle of Versailles. Prussian King Wilhelm I is proclaimed German Emperor, while the French watch Paris collapse in the distance. This is the geopolitical equivalent of proposing to your fiancé in your ex's living room wearing the ex's bathrobe. Bismarck orchestrates every symbolic detail, down to the date, exactly 170 years after a Prussian coronation. Nothing says diplomacy like, "Happy anniversary, France. Here's a new empire." But the universe loves symmetry, because exactly 48 years later, on January 18th, 1919, the Allies choose that same date to begin the Paris Peace Conference. Clemenceau essentially says, "Remember that thing you did in my fancy hallway? Yeah, we're writing your punishment on that same emotional calendar." Germany loses land, gets reparations, gets blamed for the entire war, and the seed for future catastrophe is planted. January 18th, a date so committed to drama, it writes sequels. Segment 4, science breaks the universe open, 1896 to 2002. January 18th in science is like, let's change everything, but also accidentally harm a few people along the way. In 1896, the world sees its first public X-ray demonstration. People suddenly see their bones and go, cool, also terrifying? It revolutionizes medicine almost instantly. Unfortunately, nobody knows radiation is dangerous yet, so early doctors are basically roasting themselves for science. Commitment. Then we celebrate Edward Franklin, born on this date in 1825, who co-discovered helium by analyzing sunlight. Imagine telling your friends, "I found an element in the sky." This is Victorian science at its peak. Let's look at the sun until we invent chemistry. On January 18th, 1977, the CDC officially identifies Legionella as the cause of Legionnaire's disease. It's a public health triumph and a reminder that sometimes deadly bacteria just chill in air conditioning units waiting for a plot twist. And in 1950, the U.S. finally repeals the federal oleomargarine tax. Yes, margarine. At one point, there were courtroom debates about butter imitation. This is the American Revolution nobody asked for. Then, in 2002, the FDA approves a saliva-based ovulation test, giving women a non-invasive option for tracking fertility. It's a small regulatory action with huge real-world impact. The good kind of science revolution where nobody accidentally irradiates their hand. Segment 5. War, Resistance, and Turning Points, 1911 to 1943. January 18th is packed with military turning points. For some reason, it's the universe's preferred day for dramatic defiance. In 1911, Eugene Ely becomes the first pilot to land a plane on a ship using wooden planks, some rope, sandbags, and pure delusion. This is like the Wright brothers' extreme cousin who says, "What if we took flight, but added danger?" This moment births naval aviation, which later becomes one of the most decisive forces in global warfare. All because one man said, "Yeah, I can land on that." Then 1943 arrives with 2 acts of astonishing courage. First, the siege of Leningrad is finally broken. Well, partially. After nearly 900 days of starvation-level horror, the Red Army creates a corridor. Not a huge one, more like the military version of squeezing through a crowded bar. but it's enough to save a city. And on the same day, in the Warsaw Ghetto, Jewish resistance fighters stage the January Revolt. They ambush German troops and temporarily halt deportations. It's not a military victory, it's a psychological earthquake. It tells the Nazis, you will not take people quietly. It tells history, defiance matters. 2 front lines, 2 uprisings, 1 date. January 18th, when the oppressed rise up and say, no more. Segment 6, Civil Rights, Culture, and the Digital Age, 1958 to 2012. Now we enter the modern era, where January 18th works overtime. In 1958, Willie O'Ree becomes the first black player in the NHL, while secretly blind in one eye. Hockey is already a sport where people willingly slide on knives while punching each other. Doing it half blind while breaking racial barriers, O'Ree deserves every statue. In 1975, The Jeffersons premieres, showcasing black wealth, interracial marriage, and a protagonist who loudly tells America exactly what he thinks. It pushes cultural boundaries and moves sitcoms from laugh track to laugh, but also think. Norman Lear created more social progress between commercial breaks than Congress does in a year. Then, January 18th, 1993, becomes the first day all 50 states recognize NLK Day, which only happened because Arizona refused the holiday, got punished by losing the Super Bowl, and then said, wait, we love civil rights when money is involved. The same date sees legal drama. The Boston Strangler conviction, Marion Barry being arrested in an FBI sting, and the end of the McMartin preschool trial, aka the height of America's satanic panic era, a time when common sense took a long sabbatical. Then the digital world jumps in. Yahoo.com registers its domain on January 18, 1995, which is basically the birth of yelling into the internet. Baidu is incorporated in 2000, setting the stage for China's online infrastructure. Sierra Leone's civil war officially ends in 2002, proving international intervention can work when done right. And then, January 18, 2012. Wikipedia, Reddit, Google, thousands of sites protest SOPA and PIPA by going dark. Congress freaks out because suddenly citizens know what legislation is. The blackout stops the bills. The internet successfully protests without throwing a single tear gas canister. That's power. In conclusion, January 18th is not just a day. It's a recurring plot device. Empires rise because of it. Empires fall because of it. Science reaches deeper. People resist harder. Sitcoms get smarter, and the entire internet stages a walkout that makes Congress blink. It's a date shaped by rebellion and reinvention, by people who said, we can build something better, and others who said, we will not be erased, and still others who said, let's point invisible rays at our bones because that sounds fun. So here's to January 18th, history's overachiever. I'll see you next time on Klepper's Corner, Today in History.